Let's bring into the conversation the chair of the DCCC, Democratic Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney of New York. Yesterday, he won easily his primary against a progressive challenger by 2-1. Congressman, congratulations on your win last night. Good to have you with us this morning. I want to ask you about the bigger picture for your party as the chair of the DCCC, but let's talk first about your race. You were challenged by a progressive in the district, backed by one of your colleagues, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. How did you win last night?
Oh, well, we won by being a mainstream Democrat who gets things done, and that's what the voters want. They want people who do the work, and they showed up, and we won decisively.
So when you look at the big picture, we can look up to the special election in the 19th district, also in your state. What do you see as you kind of sift through in your role as chair of the DCCC some of the results, particularly in that race, where, as we said, it's a true swing district if you look at the last presidential elections, and a close race last night, though won by the Democrat, a focus on abortion in that race, as John was saying. What do you take away from that result last night?
Well, here's what I would add to your coverage. I hope people understand there are 222 seats in the House that had a higher Biden vote than New York 19. This is a tough district, and Marcus Molinaro is a strong Republican opponent. And our candidate, Pat Ryan, was outspent 3-1. Now, we spent in this race. We played. We did it quietly. We didn't want to broadcast it. We wanted to sneak up and take it. We had an excellent candidate who also went in big, and I'll tell you what, he won by almost 4 points. That is an earthquake and should send shivers down the spine of Kevin McCarthy and Tom Emmer, because their dreams of a big Republican wave just went up in flames.
So what do you, in terms of issues, in terms of focus, what should candidates now looking over the horizon to the fall, to the midterms, what should they take away, not necessarily just from that race, but more broadly what we've seen in Kansas, for example, about where the focus should be in these Democratic races?
What's clear is that if you do Trump toxicity without Trump turnout, you have a problem. If you rip away 50 years of reproductive freedom from Americans, if you ignore the violence, gun violence in our schools, on our streets, if you ignore the attacks on our democracy, both on January 6th and the extraordinary actions by the president now in spiriting away classified information, swing voters don't like it. Voters in swing districts have common sense. Democrats are putting forth common sense candidates. We are occupying the center right now of American politics. We're getting historic things done to lower prescription drug costs, cap seniors' out-of-pocket costs, combat climate change, address gun violence, give veterans the health care they need despite Republican opposition. We're getting things done. We are occupying the center of American politics more every day. Remember, there are five now special elections since the Roe v. Wade decision, and they've all come our way by more than anyone expected. It's a clear trend. We're occupying the center. They're being dragged to the extreme right. We're going to win this election.
So, Congressman, what's your sense, not just in the district that you were just elected to last night, but your sense of, in your role as chair of the DCCC, what's a bigger motivating issue? The Roe v. Wade decision, or what happens at the grocery store, the gas station, and the pharmacy?
Look, they're both important, obviously, but gas is down more than $1 a gallon in just 60 days, and it's still going down. We have a plan that is working. By releasing our Strategic Petroleum Reserve, President Biden has addressed that problem, and we're working it every day. The other side is working on their own power. We have a plan. They have a ploy to win power for themselves, and that's the difference.
Congressman John Heilemann has a question for you. John?
Congressman, I've always feared that Mike Barnicle was going to do what he sometimes does, is steal my question, but he took it in a slightly different direction. Here's the question that I'm thinking about right now: is you've got a couple very big data points, big flashing data points. One that you pointed to, we've been talking about here, is that the backlash against the overturning of Roe v. Wade has obviously energized a lot of Democratic voters. Choices on the ballot was a big part of that race in New York last night. And so front and center, a lot of strategists say Democrats should really just focus on this issue. It's incredibly important. It's a historic decision, and it's obviously all around the country. You guys can see signs that it could pay political dividends for you. At the same time, We saw in our NBC NBC News poll that this question of democracy also on the ballot, right? The problem with democracy being on the ballot is it drags you into Trump territory. You end up talking a lot about Donald Trump when you start making that argument. I understand that it's important substantively, but for a lot of your candidates, the question of, do I want to have an argument that ends up being an argument about Donald Trump, or do you want to just stay focused on the question of Roe v. Wade and choice? I know that's a little bit of a false binary, but I think a lot of your candidates are in fact going to be making, when it comes to kind of the focus that they have this fall, they're going to have to be making some big choices between where to aim their campaigns. Which do you think is going to end up being the safer and more effective way to go for Democrats across the country?
Look, Democrats are always going to make the contrast because it's so stark, but we're going to lead with our own record of results. I mean, look at what's happened in just the last few months. The CHIPS and Science Act will bring back millions of good manufacturing jobs from China and other places to America with the industries of the future. That's a huge achievement in just the last few weeks. $200 billion to help our veterans deal with exposure to toxic substances, despite the Republicans trying to stop it. Better roads, better bridges. That's the infrastructure bill. Every school district, every fire department, every police department in America, every small business that got help during the pandemic knows that Democrats did that without any Republican support. So we have a record we're proud of, but we are going to draw a contrast, you better believe it, between a MAGA Republican Party that will take away your rights, your benefits, your freedoms, and that doesn't have the courage to stand up to Donald Trump.
Congressman Elise Jordan here. Congratulations on your win. You said a party that doesn't have the courage to stand up to Donald Trump. The DCCC has funded and supported candidates that are election deniers and Trump supported, particularly in Michigan, where Republican Peter Meijer, who was one of the few Republicans willing to vote to impeach Donald Trump, he was ousted after the DCCC spent about $500,000 on his opponent promoting election denier John Gibbs. Do you think it sends a bad message to Republicans who might want to work with Democrats that if they do cross the line, the DCCC might still go up against them?
Look, let's be clear. In a budget of about $300 million, you're talking about one race, and there's only one, by the way, not many, one, that the DCCC played in a Republican primary. And I understand people have concerns about the moral and philosophical questions there. So let me break it down for you. We spent a few $100,000 to tell people not to support them, not to fund them, to fund against them, to make clear that John Gibbs is an anti-choice extremist who is too conservative for Western Michigan. If anyone's actually seen the ad, that's what it said. Because we have a strong pro-choice Democrat there named Hillary Scholten, who, according to the Cook Political Report, is now far more likely to win that race than we were before the primary. So the big loser here is Kevin McCarthy and the MAGA crowd, because we've got a weak opponent, and we are going to win that seat.
So you think that a Republican who voted to impeach Donald Trump, that using the money in that way when his opponent hadn't been on the airwaves at all, you think that there's nothing morally questionable about that if Democrats are claiming to be for electoral integrity?
No, at least I said there are always difficult moral and philosophical questions in politics. It's politics, and you're not going to take the politics out of politics. What I'm telling you is that the larger moral imperative is to keep dangerous people from controlling our government, controlling the House of Representatives. Let's remember, the danger in Michigan didn't start with John Gibbs. The danger in our country was there on January 6th when 139 Republicans voted to overturn the election. We're chock full of dangerous people in the Congress. The key is whether they control it. And that's the larger moral imperative. And getting a weaker opponent who's going to lose that election to Hillary Scholten for $400,000. Look, we were going to spend $10, $20 million and probably lose that seat. The big loser here is Kevin McCarthy, and he knows it.
New York Democratic Congressman and chair of the DCCC, Sean Patrick Maloney, who cruised to victory in his primary last night. Congressman, thanks for being with us today. We appreciate it.